Good afternoon, everyone. We just heard from Karan Bajwa, the MD of Google Cloud India, on how Google Cloud is driving innovation as well as innovating for billions. Moving on to our next session of the day, we have a very interesting panel discussion now with outstanding leaders from the banking and fintech sector on the topic Banking on Technology for Finnovation, as financial innovation. 2020, as you all know, is the year of the new normal. Some people even call it the next normal, which means we see the emergence of a new breed of startups solving for this new context. Leading these innovators and disruptors from the front are the fintech players of India. E-payments have risen sharply, and this sector also saw the largest number of investments in the first half of this year. We've also seen some new unicorns in this sector. We'll come to that. These are truly exciting times in some for fintech players. To explore how leading fintech companies in the country are navigating the new normal with vertical solutions, data sets, and other tools for innovation and confidentiality, it's my pleasure now to welcome on board an eminent panel of experts to discuss this stage. We have first and foremost Shashank Kumar, co-founder of Razorpay. Before co-founding Razorpay in 2014, Shashank worked with SDS Labs and Microsoft in software development roles. Joining us also, another equally prominent speaker is Murari Sridharan, the CTO of BankBazaar. Murari has spent more than a decade at Microsoft in various roles and also dabbled in research before joining BankBazaar. Another outstanding speaker joining this panel is Ramki Gaddipati. Ramki is the co-founder and CTO of Zeta and leads a strong team of engineers. He also spent 7 years earlier at Directive. Welcome on board, Ramki. Another fantastic speaker we have today is Aditya Prasad, the co-founder and CTO of OkCredit. Aditya is a serial entrepreneur and has co-founded 2 other startups before OkCredit. Welcome again, Aditya. Also joining this discussion from Google Cloud is Mitesh Agarwal, Director of Customer Engineering, Google Cloud. Mitesh began his career with the Indian tech giant Wipro before working with other marquee Indian names in the tech industry. He then had a near decade-long stint with Oracle before joining Google. Welcome aboard, Mitesh. My first question to each of you now is beginning with what I talked about earlier, the new normal. So my first question to you is, how has the COVID sector impacted the fintech sector, like your companies, and how are you leading growth in the time of this new normal? Let's begin with Shashank. Shashank, in your case, how is fintech affecting you in this COVID era?
So I think when the pandemic actually started, there's definitely a huge decline in the business, close to 50 to 60%, right, which was kind of felt across the board. We being in payments, right, we think of ourselves as like an index for digital economy, right? So however the sectors are performing, however the industries are performing, our performance kind of reflect that, right? And there are quite a few sectors which are very badly impacted during the pandemic, and some of them are seeing some recovery. But one of the positive trends that we saw, getting accelerated during this time, and kind of is continuing going to happen, right, is the whole offline to online movement of businesses, is the digitization of businesses that is there, right? So I think we saw like almost a year or two acceleration on that front, and today we are seeing more and more businesses shifting to adopting digital tools to figure out how they can operate in a remote first environment or operate with more business efficiency, and that kind of is giving a boost to us also, and we are preparing ourselves to put more focus towards small and medium enterprises in the country, and seeing like how we can further support them in that journey, right? So that's more from an industry perspective. And if you ask me personally, I think we've done multiple things in the past, even when the pandemic happened, like how can we support NGOs better, how can we support self-help groups better as they're trying to support the ecosystem in the country in times of need. And going forward also, like we are trying to focus more on that, as things start coming back to normal, how can we provide funding to different businesses that are there through our various lending partners that are there on the platform, to help them get back on their feet and get back to normalization as much as possible.
Thanks, Shashank. Let's turn to Murari now. Murari, can you set the stage for us? How has COVID affected the scenario for your fintech company?
As Shashank said, I think this affected us quite badly, right? All the companies, and same thing happened to us. But what I'm pretty happy about is there were a number of things that we did. Of course, we will hopefully talk about all of that through the rest of the panels. I'll just give you a summary, right? The biggest challenge that we had was contactless was no longer an afterthought. And even though we have been pushing contactless finance for a while, the banks were sort of slow to adopt. Luckily, the RBI master circular had given the clearance for video KYC. So we really ramped up on everything, from acquisition to KYC being all digital. So that contactless finance change has been, accelerated significantly in the last few months. Right now, because of that, we are now back to, at least 60-70% of pre-COVID levels in terms of where our business was. Even though we took a big hit, went down to zero, and literally had to grow back the business. Right. The other big thing that had to happen very quickly is, we have to get everybody, including the folks in the call center, to work remotely. And that whole remote management and the scale of how we had to do that fast enough, while ensuring that all the regulatory compliance hurdles are, crossed correctly, and also making sure that people are able to work as effectively as they would without compromising on the data. So on both those fronts, we've had a significant, impact and change. But it's for the good. And the good news right now is we are really hitting a stride right now. I'm happy to discuss more, as we go through the panel.
Thanks, Murari. You mentioned scale and speed. We'll come to that in just a minute. But let's first turn to Ramki now. Ramki, can you set us the context for us in terms of how COVID is affecting your company?
Yeah. So, like anybody, I think we did have a bad month in terms of when the entire lockdowns are manifested. I think we did have a bad month, but very quickly, I think things have recovered for us. We operate in multiple segments. One is the prepaid, where we not only measure the transaction value and volume, but also in terms of the value that people are depositing or bringing into the prepaid ecosystem itself. That we initially had 1 month of a bad hit per se, but I think thereafter everything resumed to normal. We also have a particular exposure to workplace, a good volume of our transaction used to come from cafeterias where people used to go to work and spend there. The transaction volume there has steeply declined for obvious reasons, but value, I think, has gone back to normal across the board, as we see. So what we see is that the mode of or the places of transaction have changed, and people have been able to now come back to normalcy in a different mode, different place. So we see most of it fully resumed. We're 85%, 95% of between 85 to 90 of the total transaction value that we are just seeing on the platform across the board. Of course, the volume is much lesser because the ticket size has dramatically increased for us. We used to otherwise deal with $70, $80 as a ticket size for the transaction when people spend at a cafeteria. So it's just substantially different for us in that sense. But that being said, I think we have other business where we actually are technology partners for the bank, where we are seeing tremendous appetite, hunger for digital products. I think banks across the board have realized that this is kind of a permanent change. It is not going to be, the access and desire for digital modes of actually transacting has gone one level lower in the pyramid. So if you just look at it, so therefore giving access to hundreds of more million people to giving the comfort to transact digitally, and thereby I think banks have taken it far more seriously, and we have been able to work with them and working on various products that are going to be one of their kind to come into the market. Yeah.
Thanks, Ramki. It's good to hear a mix of revive and thrive in your different stories for your different departments. Let's turn to Aditya now. Aditya, what's your story? How are you coping and dealing with this COVID era period?
Okay, so first of all, how we sense how the businesses are working is via the sales that they do on credit. So all our users are small businesses, people having less than equal to 3 employees, which are recording sales on credit and doing relevant accounting on our platform. So obviously the sales is kind of a representation of or sales on credit is kind of a representation of their overall sales. So we can proxy it how the business is behaving based on that. So in a single day after the lockdown hit, our sales on credit, basically overall transaction volume went to 40% of the previous value. Now it has recovered, but there are few interesting insights. For example, even though we have recovered the sales on credit transaction volume happening, but the number of users doing that is less. So it means there are fewer people doing more of such transactions. The other thing that we are seeing is basically there is a different kind of distribution across category. So for example, the essentials, basically the kirana, the mobile accessories, recharge, and digital electronics kind of thing, and medical. These are kind of growing versus the others have slightly basically lower volumes that they're getting. Few other key insights, for example, if we see the recovery, for example, Northeast, where a lot of industry is dependent on, say, tourism, there the recovery has not been that much because, yeah, and similarly about, say, some of the metropolitans, because metropolitan have this tendency that a lot of people come from different cities to the metropolitan to work there. So, say, the amount of recovery that you have seen in some place like a UP or a Bihar, where people have gone back, that is better than, say, a place like Karnataka or say Bangalore or Maharashtra or Punjab, because these are places where people go to work. So there is some motion of people where they are going to work, as well as the recovery that is happening, which is very specific to the nature of industry. And in terms of how our product is working, obviously people are a bit skeptic, want to give credit a bit less because there's always a cash crunch and everything. And the other thing is from a product side of view, there is a demand for one, digitization of more thing, and OkShop and other initiatives that we are launching is towards like bringing those business online. And the other part is if we can anyway help them to collect their money faster, because they, given the overall demand is going down and like all the things is going down, so basically they need that free cash. So these are some of the demands that we are seeing in our existing product in terms of bring down my credit cycle, help me get my money faster, as well as new areas where the primary motivation of the business is to recover back and grow their customer base. So any online shop, OkShop thing, any such initiative is effectively so that the business thinks, okay, I now need new channel because my existing channel might not be working that good. And especially this is especially applicable for the non-commodity, non-essential products.
Thanks so much, Aditya. A number of you have mentioned speed and scale, but the other challenge that also arises is agility. How do companies keep up with sudden spikes in traffic? So my question to each one of you is, how are you using technology along with maybe business design to give a high quality user experience to your customers, even during conditions of such rapid and volatile change? So let's begin with you, Aditya. How are you managing to juggle on the one hand, scale, speed, and quality and agility?
Okay, so one thing, how I think about how today's technology companies are working is that there are so many good open source tools and solutions. It's like building things out of Lego. There are smaller pieces available out there. You have to be intelligent in choosing them and basically kind of compose a good mixture, right? So for example, Google Cloud, so our entire infrastructure mostly runs on GKE, Google Kubernetes Engine, which has a lot of auto scaling capabilities, right? On top of that, we are some things we already have and some things we are adding. Basically, the thing is based on how our traffic is behaving, we should be able to kind of the system should scale accordingly. There is one other interesting thing also the business in India follows a very kind of uniform trend. So whenever, even pre-COVID or post-COVID, if we see the nature of our requests, right, there's a peak at like 11 a.m. when people are kind of busy in shops, and there's a peak at like 6 to 7 p.m. So it usually follows a camel kind of hump. You go down, then afternoon you come basically at the bottom and you go up. So we can obviously plan according to this, our resources. And on top of that, as I mentioned, right, the whole open source community and the tools and technologies provided by these cloud providers effectively have taken away all this load from us. A significant portion, not completely, but a significant portion of the load.
Great. Thanks, Aditya. How about you, Ramki? Ramki, how are you juggling these two very different ends of the spectrum, scale and quality?
Absolutely. And as Aditya mentioned, I think like we have been able to place a lot of reliance on what we, along with the open source community, are able to bring as a technology stack. I think the scale is no longer the same kind of problem one could be talking about 5 years ago. It is a lot more accessible. Scale is not the first thing I think that bothers CTOs of the companies, if done right. Of course, if you're trying to scale legacy systems, it's a different pain point altogether. I think like, there are tools, there are means, there are wherewithal, all of it is widely available. I think that's what I see. But of course, being in the industry that we are in, the concerns come from elsewhere. There are privacy, there are security, integrity, and whatever not. I think that those are the challenges that I think like they're taking new shapes and forms. I think that's what would be a challenge, I would say. But otherwise, scale, I think, is pretty accessible to everyone.
And how about in your case, Murari? How are you managing scale as well as quality of user experience?
Yeah, so I echo what everybody is saying, because scale is no longer as big a challenge as it used to be. Although for us, one thing that's true for us is we've been around long enough. We've been around since 2008. So we have parts of the stack that are legacy. So we do have the pain point of migrating that legacy stack to a more modern infrastructure. But then there's a large portion of the stack that's built on these modern technologies of that are allowing us to scale quite easily, right? But the other thing is, I don't see scale right now to be, much worse than pre-COVID, because even pre-COVID, our growth, the top of the funnel growth was always really, really high. Right now, the question is how much of that converts, right? So that's where the challenge is. And we also spend a lot of time, campaigning to our own base. So we sort of, are able to control our spikes much better because of the way we campaign, because we've done enough analytics to know when do people respond, and how, based on the size of the campaigns, we'll know how many people are going to respond. So all of that helps us size, better. But scale is much more accessible. I agree with the other speakers.
Thanks, Murari. How about you, Shashank? In your case, how are you managing to juggle both scale, speed, as well as quality of UX?
Yeah, actually, currently, because of the IPL season happening, and then because of Big Billion Day sale happening, which kind of prompts a huge sale season in the in the entire e-com industry, right? And then the upcoming Diwali festival, like we are seeing tremendous scale on the platform, and it's kind of the highest that's been there in our existence, right? And I think we invest a lot in our infrastructure, not just currently, like we have been doing that in past few years, that is there, right? And given that we provide a very utility-based service that is there, right? It's absolutely essential that we provide a platform which is stable, which is scalable, and which people are able to put their trust on for their transactions. That is there, right? And I think the way we are managing today is kind of similar. Like we have very good quality talent, good quality folks looking after it, who enjoy those challenges, who relish those challenges, and who want to ensure that what may come, we are able to handle the scale of business in all the ways possible that is possible. That is there, right? And I'm happily surprised with the ease with which the team has transitioned to this remote first environment. I think it was difficult in the beginning for sure for quite a few folks, but I think as things have slightly opened up as well, and now people are having some more bits of their social life, back to them, and they're having a decent time with their family as well. We are now seeing that people also are kind of not in the burnout phase anymore, and are positively enjoying their work. So they're kind of getting, in some cases, the best of both worlds. Enjoying time with their family as well as having a productive time towards the organization as well.
Thanks, Shashank, for reminding us that there's a festival around the corner. In fact, we are in a sort of festival right now. But along with these good news, there also is a lot of risk in these environments. Digital also opens up a lot of risk in terms of security. So let me begin with Mitesh now. Mitesh, what are some of your thoughts on how technology opens up opportunity, but also can be used to control some of the security risks in this space? Mitesh?
Thank you. Thanks, Madan, and privileged to be here along with my fellow panelists. Thank you for the opportunity. And happy festive season to everybody. I hope the festive season brings back cheer to our businesses, especially with all the fintechs on the panel. Let me talk about security a bit, because I think it's often a fairly debated subject, especially when you interact with financial services institutions on one side. There are lots of misconceptions as well, and there are lots of, I think, asks and so on. I've seen the evolution of that both from the banking ecosystem with the regulator as well as with the fintechs, and I would say that the security solutions move from all the way from the device to the data center, and Google Cloud and Google has the privilege of being across the board. So there are a few things that I wanted to kind of set out there upfront. So in terms of transparency, we as Google and Google Cloud are very clear about our commitments to our customers, folks on this panel, about your data, right? Because I think fundamentally that's the underlying thing that everybody is extremely concerned about. Rule number one at Google Cloud is your data belongs to you and no one else. We do not sell customer data to any third party, nor do we use it for advertising. Your data is simply your data. As I said, that refer back to rule number one. Secondly, on the technology side of things, your data is always encrypted in transit and at rest and at all times. Now that's unique to Google. I think there are lots of technologies, there are lots of providers who take care of data encryption at transit or at rest, but not at all times. And you simply do not even have to ask for it. It's not a performance penalty. It's not like an extra feature. It's baked into everything that Google does. We have very explicit rules to guard against insider access. And I think that's generally been a concern that we've heard from a lot of organizations. There's absolutely no backdoors to Google, no secret government access, and so on and so forth, right? We take pride in a lot of the international audits, the local audits that are required, to govern that, all of the regulatory framework in the financial services world, and so on. Now, these are very, very important in terms of our mission, in terms of the way we guard data, in the way we can, do things. To wrap this up, there are essentially, if I can summarize this, we do this in three fundamental ways. We provide protection from threats through a secure foundation. So the core infrastructure that is designed, built, and operated is always done with security in mind. The second part is around control. We provide customers with a constantly expanding array of controls that they can because all of you on the panel, all of your customers are always looking at how do you meet policy, regulatory, and business objectives. And therefore, we provide the control back to you. The third is that we meet our compliance responsibilities, provide capabilities to make compliance easier for our customers. So in the financial services world, in the fintech space, I think these are very critical. And as Google Cloud, we're very, proud to say that, we do all of these for our customers, and we always open to, any feedback that anybody has for us.
Thanks, Mitesh. Let me ask the question to Shashank now. Shashank, in your case, how are you ensuring technology security for your customers, and how are you conveying the message to your customers that the solutions are trusted and compliant and secure? Shashank?
We handle a lot of financial transactions, right? And it's absolutely essential that you kind of generate that trust that the data on the platform is absolutely secure, and we take a bunch of measures around that, right? So I think we do it through 2 or 3 means. One is that we are very proactive around certifying our infrastructure, our organization for the industry leading things that are there, like PCI DSS or ISO or SOC 1, SOC 2. So there are multiple kind of compliances that kind of help certify and give the sense that that we are kind of following the bare minimum, following the best practices that is there. That is one, but that's again that's more to towards what's already happened. Then we are very proactive, in terms of always vetting like whatever we are putting out on the production that is there, right? So any kind of product release that happens, any kind of technological modification that happens, we have a bunch of processes built in to ensure that we are not leaving security holes behind. And any kind of security hole is kind of pretty expensive for the organization as it stands for us or for our customers. So a combination of these measures helps that. We're even trying to see that even in this kind of environment, we are trying to devise a bunch of security trainings for folks, whether in technology or outside of technology, as well as to what kind of signals to always be watchful for, as to what kind of risk that is there with any kind of business, with any kind of customer, and how to react to that, how to escalate that, right? And I think a combination of these measures gives a lot of confidence that we kind of are on the right track. We have the industry best practices. We have the among the best security teams in the country, and the processes that we have devised over a period of time will kind of helps us stand in good stead towards our security posture.
How are you conveying this message of trust to your customers and also backing it up with a solid technology foundation?
Yeah, I think in our case, I think like we have exposure to not just the Indian customer, but also in terms of various other countries and various other regulators. We provide technology to banks, and we are under a much higher scrutiny. And of course, the needs and demands are also much higher. We bring security into the architecture itself, where entire systems are built on zero trust architecture. And while we predominantly run on cloud, barring some components. We also have this principle of being opaque to the cloud provider, where, while Mitesh has mentioned that, okay, every cloud provider tries to keep customer data as customer data and not touch it. Okay, so we the kind of standards that we are held to is generally much higher when a customer is actually doing a due diligence on you. We can't say that we can't we can't say that we rely on Google promise or Amazon promise. So we have to just show them evidence that, okay, we are secure. So we have this principle of being opaque to the cloud provider, which actually means every activity, although we are using compute, although we are using storage, we theoretically could establish through encryption and through various security measures and controls that we force that, okay, the cloud provider themselves cannot actually ever look into the data of the customer. At the same time, being in the issuer side of the business of financial transaction, we have requirements to mitigate risk and protect the customer in many ways. So it's not always technology, a phishing attack or a social engineering is not always a technology threat that we have. We need to mitigate against that as well. And we have several controls, several approaches in terms of how the basic transaction is manifested to the customer. We have several new products and interactions developed to mitigate such risks for the customer at various levels. So it's a infrastructure, it's your practices, certifications, and audits, and rigorous reviews, as well as the core feature construction itself, the design of the feature, UX of the feature, what it allows and does not allow. All of these form together a comprehensive set of measures to ensure security and ensure trustworthiness in the entire ecosystem.
Thanks, Ramki. How about you, Murari? Murari, how are you ensuring security for data, transactions, and services?
Yeah, so see, we've been working with pretty much all the top financial institutions for almost a decade now. So this is like bread and butter for us. Otherwise, it's very hard to survive in this business. So for us, security is always a work in progress, and it comes in layers, right? Like, so everything from perimeter security to network security to endpoint security to application security, we have different processes and best practices that we have. And the one thing that happens, which is for the good, is every time we onboard a bank, even the same bank for a different product, we get audited. So we go through a bunch of audits every year, which is very helpful because it constantly keeps testing whether the system is functioning as it should. But all of this generates a lot of data, right? And thankfully, we have a lot of open source tools that these days allows us to monitor, create alerts on top of this data. And we've been doing, things like, anomaly detection, because we have enough data that we are able to identify that, something is amiss, right? Like, so we have a bunch of processes around this data and how this, the security operations center is sort of managed and maintained. But as the other panelists were saying, right, like this is not just about, technology and then encryption and stuff like that. We also need to train everybody in terms of best practices on what not to do, right? Like most of the, attacks that eventually result in a crazy amount of money loss, the entry into this company is something very, very trivial, right? It'll be somebody's password. It'll be something very simple that causes this, right? So we do a lot of, training for the employees to understand how this whole social engineering attacks works, phishing attacks works. So you have to do all of that. Now with COVID, one thing that's happened is, now every employee, whether it is your, like a CRO call agent or your engineer, everybody is now working from home, and they have different, accesses that we have to provide for them. So we do a lot of zero trust remote management of these devices. We have to make sure that, all of the devices are patched. All of that is like a constant thing that we keep doing. But the other thing is, as other panelists have said, there is a lot of security audits that we need to go through. So we are PCI DSS certified, we are ISO certified. I've been working very closely with the data protection bill for that's coming up in the parliament. So we're trying to stay ahead of all the requirements that are going to come to us, because otherwise what will happen is you'll be reacting when there won't be sufficient time, right? So we've been keeping abreast of a whole bunch of those activities and then staying ahead of the curve.
Thanks, Murari. Now, in your case, Aditya, what are some security frameworks and measures you have in place? Aditya?
Okay, so if I talk about security, there are like two parts. One is domain agnostic. So some best practices that everyone applies, right? Which is encryption during transit, at rest, you have your servers in India. So that is one layer of security that we apply. And then there's the security that is specific to OkCredit, what domain or what business that we are doing. So the inputs that we get for this specific OkCredit specific security basically comes one via the audits that we do. So at say every quarter, every 6 months, we keep on doing the audit of our web apps and everything. So that is one source of input. And the other source of input is users themselves directly. So users tell us, okay, I fear that I might lose my data. I fear that someone else might see my data. In fact, there have been features which users have recommended. For example, even our first user, they recommended okay, in terms of security, you should allow only specific staff to add payment. Sales can be added by anyone, which is very reflective of how they work in the shop actually. There is one counter person, only they are allowed to kind of deal with cash. Everyone else can maybe make a sale or something. So these are some of the sources. There is a direct input from the user. Okay, this is something that I'm not liking, which gives rise to features, app lock, and all those things that is there. Then there's the audit part, which again, audit and some minor bug bounty also. Occasionally, people have also reached out to us. Okay, we found this thing. So audit plus bug bounty is the non-user oriented channel of OkCredit's security. And then obviously there's the best practices part. There is one slight, I would say, advantage, or at least not we have to concern right now, because any payments that we are doing right now, that is via a provider like Razorpay or Cash Free or something like that. So in that case, we are not actually saving users card info or that kind of information. So that is one step lighter for us, I would say. But still, at the bottom layer, yeah, it's best practices plus audits plus inputs from user and features for catering to that.
Thanks, Aditya. Let me switch now to another issue, regulation. What are some regulatory issues you face? What are some enablers? What are some blockages that can be removed, perhaps?
Regulatory issues that we face, one is basically it's financial data. So geographical, you have to get all the data in India. Payment information, as I told you, we have UPI addresses and stuff about user, but card and other details that we are not saving. So there, at least the regulation part is not there. Yeah, I think till now no other regulations.
Yeah, that's a good start. That's a good start, Aditya. How about Ramki? Ramki, you want to add some other issues over there? What are some new different issues you're facing in terms of regulation? Ramki?
Yeah, I think the Indian regulator has been quite active even during the COVID times. As late as yesterday, there was a new regulation that was released that, okay, you cannot have proprietary QR codes anymore. It must be only either Bharat QR or UPI QR. Okay, so that's a regulatory change which would have some impact. In a cafeteria, we wouldn't have probably given a Bharat QR, so to speak. So we now need to restake and whatever there are measures that we need to take. So that's one aspect. I mean, regulation is as lively as a startup is, like, in the sense like today regulators are learning a lot and reacting to them as rapidly as they could, and it's a very interesting thing. Like video KYC, the number of changes that have come about to be how Aadhaar had affected us all in the years before 2019, and so I think we have seen a lot of changes. I mean, that's in India, and we are, as Murari was mentioning, we are also very keenly following what is going to come out of this data protection bill. That's going to be a serious thing that is waiting to happen. And if you just look at other countries, everybody is just after data sovereignty and data protection. Every country pretty much that we operate in have their own specific data protection acts, data sovereignty acts that we need to comply with. So I think regulators are very, very active across the board. And I think we no longer should look at them as the challengers. We just have to incorporate them into your thinking, incorporate them into your practices. It's going in a certain way, and hopefully it will all be for the good towards the end.
Thanks, Ramki. How about you, Murari? In your case, Murari, what are some regulatory impacts on your business?
So the good thing is, so we work very closely with the RBI in terms of constantly submitting suggestions, papers. Our CEO Adil is quite involved with Vicky. So we've been trying to influence regulation as best as we could as an industry. And the primary goal for us has been that what do you have to do to make the onboarding as seamless as possible and remove the drop-off points, which not only cause potential fraud, but they also increase the cost significantly for the bank. So when we do a complete digital onboarding and we give it to a bank, after that, we don't want that funnel to have a lot of drop-offs, especially if there is a lot of in-person visits, additional documentation, things like that needed, right? So for us, it's always been trying to influence and move us towards a completely contactless, so presenceless, paperless kind of a journey, right? Paperless has happened. It's the presenceless part that was tricky. And luckily, just before COVID, the timing could not have been any better. If not for that video KYC, I think we would have been really, really screwed, right? So regulator has been doing all the right things. But for us, it's about working with the bank, trying to reduce documentation where possible. If documentation is required, making sure that it's only obtained from digital sources and that being valid, from a compliance point of view. It's those kinds of things but it's constant and it's evolving.
Thanks, Murari. How about you, Shashank? How is the regulatory landscape affecting your operations?
I think we've been dealing with regulations since a long time, and a great thing about the payments industry and the banking industry is that there's always some new regulation around the corner that you have to kind of look out for and ensure that you are in compliance. Currently, few major themes that are going on, right? I mean, one is around the regulatory piece around payment aggregator license that RBI has brought up, which is, I think, going to significantly affect the industry. Hopefully, mostly for the good, with few caveats here and there. And I think it kind of shows the maturity of the industry overall that RBI is kind of giving that kind of recognition to the industry and also going about the license process that is there. In some ways, it's really positive for the customer that they can trust certain brands, they can verify the aspects around license that is there from RBI and other such things, and also weed out bad actors and fraudulent actors who do not have the basis for that operation that is there, right? And beyond that, we are seeing interesting trend around neobanking in the country, and we are obviously a very active player in that space, especially how we are targeting businesses with the new age banking solutions, through in a mobile first, cloud first world that is there, right? And I think the regulator has traditionally been really conservative around any kind of banking regulation changes, which is mostly again for the good. Given the kind of financial services penetration that has happened in the country, there's a lot of scope for digitization, a lot of scope for spreading financial literacy and other such things, right? So it's going to be really interesting. It's going to be really something that folks are looking forward to towards the regulator as to how the landscape is going to change. And I think a lot of new age businesses and fintech businesses aspirations kind of depend on these, right? And I think till now, of course, regulators have been cautiously changing some of these rules, and we're looking forward to how that kind of plays out in next 2 years. And we have always kind of been on the right side of regulation and always benefited from that. And I think fintech industry will welcome any sort of move in that space.
Thanks, Shashank. I think we're all looking forward to some good news till the end of the year. My next question now is for Mitesh. Mitesh, we've heard from very diverse companies for using digital infrastructure in very different ways for different audiences, different offerings, and so on. So, Mitesh, my question for you is, what are some ways in which customization can improve future offerings of technology for fintech companies? Mitesh?
Yeah, thank you, Madan. It was very interesting to see all the comments around regulation and security and uniformity of services and so on. What's interesting is also looking at it from the business in, the consumer in, and so on, and that's how we built our solutions, our products, and so on. What we see clearly is that one clear massive, I think, change that has happened is in the consumer habits. In the past, if you recall it, and I can relate a lot to it, considering if you look at the way the Android ecosystem has, bloomed and grown, it's very similar to the way I think the whole financial services ecosystem has grown. And we use a lot of terms around fintech, insurtech, wealth tech, payments, and so on, lending and lendtech, and so on, right? And all of this, essentially what ended up happening was that earlier you had to go to a provider of financial services as a consumer. Now you're bringing that closer, to them. And that's a very fundamental shift in the way things have happened. That's happened because now each of the players that are there on this panel and a lot of others, out there in this space have really made this a platform play, right? And really, if you look at this, as a result, the customer expectations have totally changed, right? Coupled with that, we have all the regulatory requirements, all of the increased privacy and security requirements that all the panelists very eloquently spoke about. So the way we've looked at, solutions around this space for us is really around how we can redesign the entire customer experience piece, right? And there are elements of this. There are elements that, each of the technology groups, the business groups within many of the fintech providers, they, really do. And that customer experience is not just B2C. There's also a lot of B2B. There's a lot of government to business sort of, onboarding that people do. UPI is a great example of how we started with one payment interaction and then just kept building on it in terms of building the whole ecosystem. The second part, and I think it perhaps didn't get touched as much, till now, and I'm really hoping to get some more insights around that, is how we can transform the whole data and analytics space while we continue to manage risk. So one of the areas there, I think, and this is an often said thing, but we haven't really seen that take off as much, and we're hoping that will. Everybody's spoken about data monetization a lot, and I underline we've spoken a lot about data monetization, but it'll be good to really start seeing organizations monetize that data. And I think, there's a lot of very interesting things that Google has done to really help there, and we are happy to partner there. The third part, I think, is, and this is kind of induced a lot more and aggravated a lot more thanks to the pandemic, is around how you can really improve your operational efficiency. Some of it is going to be by default with modernization, which luckily I think most of the fintechs don't have a legacy problem, right? So modernization can really help you there. But I think the operational efficiencies also comes in terms of the cost, that you start incurring, the kind of efficiencies that you can start building in, right? And we have a bunch of solutions around that we can always offer. So in my mind, these three areas is what we are really starting to see a lot of adoption. We're starting to see a lot of fintechs partner with us, work with the overall Google ecosystem, not just Google Cloud, the overall Google ecosystem, whether it's with GPay, whether it's with our whole platform on YouTube, whether it's our platform on Maps, and so on and so forth, right? So very, very interested in partnering with the entire financial services, fintech ecosystem to come up with unique 360-degree solutions and also potentially go to market with them as well.
Thanks, Mitesh. You brought up some very interesting points about how to use emerging ways of positioning analytics. So we have just about 10 minutes left. My last question to the panel would be for each of you, maybe pick one or two emerging technologies and the impact it may have on your business. For example, we're hearing a lot about AR, VR, chatbots, automation, blockchain. So maybe each of you can pick one of these technologies and maybe some speculation on how it might affect your business. Shashank, you want to start? I can go down the whole list and end with you, Mitesh. Shashank?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the major technology which has had a lot of impact on the business already is artificial intelligence. Right, we have been able to, slowly over the course of years, been embedding AI into various processes that we have to help them scale and not relying on human efficiency anymore. Right, so from the point of onboarding, fraud monitoring, it's kind of really helped us a lot. Right, even now at the scale that we are onboarding customers, the identity verification has also gone through a lot of intelligence measures, which helps us separate out bad actors from the platform. These things, I think, have saved millions of dollars for us, which otherwise would have been very expensive and cumbersome for us to work on manually. Right. Beyond that, we also offer a very good product, which is to prevent COD returns for businesses or for e-commerce, right? Which is also heavily powered by artificial intelligence, and that and the returns that we have seen, and the savings that we have seen for the businesses is been pretty amazing. And which kind of just points out, like, I think you'll see more and more applications of AI going forward in the country. That is there. We've kind of stayed away from blockchain. We still feel it's real world applications beyond as a currency is kind of unknown today and still needs a lot of research and development, right? So we're still waiting to see more positive developments in the ecosystem before we think of more concrete stuff from an organization perspective, even though we keep researching things in the space that is there, right?
Very good insight, Shashank. How about you, Murari? What do you have your eye on and what do you expect to get out of it?
So see, right now, our goal is really about profitability, and it goes back to the monetization or better analytics of the data that you already have, right? Like, I think that's where the difference is going to be in terms of margin. So we spend a lot of time just making sure that we build these analytics using, ML, AI techniques about everything from matching the right customer to the right financial product, to be able to build models for, propensity to pay, probability of default. So basically, all of this is going to ensure that not only the acquisition cost is less, but we are building the right kind of portfolio for a given bank so that the NPAs are less. And it's those technologies that we are primarily focused on, right? And it's the only way for us, somebody like us, to get to profitability, right? So it's not so much that we are looking at what other tools are available, such as blockchain or whatever. It's all about, I have the data, I have a lot of data. I need to make sure that the customer experience is as seamless and friction-free as possible, while ensuring that the security and the portfolio quality is met for the bank. So it's only under that lens that we are looking at tools, right? Like now a chatbot and all of that. To the extent that it helps us in this funnel to keep it friction-free, we would use them.
How about you, Ramki? In your case, what are you experimenting with, and what do you expect to integrate in the future?
I think in our case, it's predominantly BNML AI. That's where our focus for the next at least half a dozen years will be. There's a lot that we could uncover. It's very, very early days for all of, at least for us, in terms of what potential it represents and what we could get out of it. Yes, and also I do not think to borrow from where Murari was mentioning, it is now there is a plethora of technologies that are available to pick and choose from, and with thanks to cloud and whatever various service providers are able to allow to embed into each of the products. One need not heavily invest into each of these things. You can measure in what you're offering while borrowing the services from whosoever could be effectively delivering it. Like, for example, the amount of investment that has gone into processing Indian languages, that's tremendous. One, I need not invest in that. I'd rather borrow from the Googles and Microsofts rather than investing in that, for example. So I think, but of course, the real world application in the financial industry for those things is tremendous. I think like we'll be picking it case by case basis, but particularly for us as an organization, I think we are deepening our investments into the infrastructure, security, and machine learning. I think these are the areas that I think we continue to. This is our core investment, and we'll borrow wherever else we can borrow from others.
Thanks, Ramki. How about you, Aditya? What's on your radar and what do you want to implement?
Echoing everyone, obviously, like data-related intelligence is one. And I'll tell you in our context, how does it apply? So the first part is obviously we are having a partial visibility into the business network, who is connected to whom and who is selling on credit to whom. So there's a lot of potential of, again, in future data monetization for us, but now features that we can give to this user. For example, this is your average credit cycle and okay, you should collect back money now because it is being too late. Or if say a new customer joins, you can say, okay, this customer defaulted on so-and-so other merchants and you should limit the amount of money that you're giving to them. So this is a kind of data which is related to either potentially that we can monetize or we can give value to the user. The other part of, I would say, data is key. It's like not exactly related to data, but it's more like see, a lot of our users are basically very diverse, right? So there are different categories, and if I tell you the perfect product for them is WhatsApp, it's so simple that they understand it. And the requirement of data in this dimension is we could keep on creating so many complicated solutions, but data has to personalize it for the user. So at the end, the thing that you see, that is like a WhatsApp. So you might have like 50 features, but there is a 99% chance that single user is not going to use more than top 3 features which is relevant for them, and removing all the clutter and showing exactly what is relevant for the future. So this is not a new feature being derived from the data. This is just understanding the user and kind of recommending of our catalog, this is what is relevant for you. So this is on the data side of it. The other thing that I think which is happening is basically, again, our users are not like we are not our users, right? It's like slightly less educated, maybe in tier 2, tier 3 cities. So there's a lot of interplay between online and offline. So any technology, QR is the perfect example of this. QR is actually a piece of technology which for payments has made it seamless to transition the physical and the digital world, right? Generalize QR a bit more. Let's say Android, by using a QR app to scan, a payment app to scan a QR code, iOS has the default QR reader, right? You can just scan any QR and it opens a website or whatever. So the thing is, if such a thing also comes in Android, which is not there right now, then a lot of digital to real world kind of interfaces open up. You go to a restaurant, you scan a thing, you get the basically their menu. And so a lot of commerce related activity could be enabled if we have such seamless channel between the app world and the physical world. And right now, I guess QR is the problem. In fact, in India, we have already seen with the payment industry, and in China, like in a lot more. This restaurant example that I was giving, almost every app in China at the top right would have the QR, scan QR. In fact, so I'm not sure why Android is not putting it. Once they put it, like, it would solve a lot of
that. Yeah. Now, so Mitesh, you have the last word. You've heard a lot of references to Google from all our speakers. Google has an amazing portfolio of technologies, products, services, offerings. What are you betting on, and what do you think our audience should be looking at in terms of emerging technologies? Mitesh?
Yes, I think I was very intently listening to what all the fellow panelists were saying, and I think the underlying, it almost seemed like, the whole data, ML, AI, is kind of becoming foundational to everybody's business. So, for Google, we were born on that foundation, as everybody knows. A lot of the core technologies that power these were invented at Google, whether it's TensorFlow, what Jeff Dean did, or the whole Kubernetes platform, all of these were, is very core to the way Google looks at technologies. I think the one additional area certainly that I want to, highlight is I think businesses in fintech have been huge beneficiaries of the API ecosystem. Really being able to expose your API as well as being able to, partake in the API ecosystem has been like fundamental to that business. And it's become like a default. If you look at the way Google's looking at that part around Apigee, that's becoming foundational to a lot of financial services institutions working there. We have a number of examples in India, where we are partnering with them both on the banking side as well as on the fintech side. So that's going to be very, very interesting. I think the other part that's going to get really, in addition to what the panelists said, is going to be around how you'll now start getting the 360-degree customer view, right? And that's going to be very interesting. And more importantly, how do you start servicing them if there is an issue with a payment, right? Or there is an issue with a service that you're providing? How do you now go and start servicing them, considering, and Aditya made a very interesting point around, we servicing tier 2, tier 3 cities, in the fintech world a lot, right? How are you going to now start servicing them? Because they really don't know how to, talk to a call center provider. So how can you, start making it more vernacular in nature? And Ramki made a great point there as well, right? Can we just go ahead and use a lot of the research that is already done, and Google Cloud offers that out of the box, right? So how can we start giving you a lot of contact center AI, start giving you a lot of AI APIs out of the box that you can consume and make it vernacular? In fact, we've set up a vernacular research center for India, right? Specifically, taking care of the multitude of languages, accents, a lot of speech to text, text to speech technologies that will be very useful, I think, in this world as well. And finally, I think the most important tenet is going to be how we still work with all of this and have an open ecosystem. That's going to be foundational in my mind, right? And I think I heard a lot of the panelists say that. So financial services, the fintech ecosystem is going to be, in my mind, booming, very useful for us as a learning pad as well, to start giving technologies around it in a very secure way, whether it's on the device side, whether it's on the a consumer side, or on the regulatory side. So all of those are going to be very foundational. So this was really, really interesting and a great learning opportunity as well for us.
Thanks, Mitesh. That was very well said and a very good note to wrap up this session. It was a terrific learning opportunity, I'm sure, to all of our audiences. Once again, thank you, Shashank, Murari, Ramki, Aditya, and Mitesh. Some of my key takeaways from this discussion are the importance of the 3 L's. Leadership. You must have leadership to bring this technology to the fore. Secondly, you must use a Lego kind of a mindset, mix and match all the different building blocks out there. And thirdly, leverage. Find the key leverage points in your industry and find the right technology and the right value proposition to deliver value to your customers. On that note, we need to wrap up this panel. It's been a terrific discussion. I look forward to more discussion with you in future panels and at the rest of the sessions. Thank you all so much. Have a good evening.